These people all rely on selling blood to survive. If they don't sell blood for a day, they won't have money to live until the next day. Xu Sanguan sold blood 7 times in one day, and he was drawn 16 jin of blood, with no trace of color on his face from the blood drawn. The doctors saw that he was unwilling to continue drawing blood, so he went outside to hang himself upside down on the railing to let blood rush to his head, hoping to have a healthy complexion so that he could sell more blood. Therefore, he was willing to risk his life just to sell blood, all because of poverty. Xu Sanguan's first blood sale was to marry his wife. He was already over 30, and no girl in the village was willing to marry her, so she had no choice but to turn to selling blood. At that time, a pair of shoes cost 1,000 yuan, which was equivalent to a month's salary. Villagers who often sold blood brought her to the riverbank and made her drink 8 large cups of water at once. As long as she drank enough to fill her body, she could draw blood more than 10 times. When she arrived at the hospital, Sanguan couldn't wait to unzip his pants. At that moment, the older brother suddenly, now not only could he not measure, but he also had to continue drinking. The three of them rushed to the water pipe and gulped down a few mouthfuls. By the time they entered the doctor's office, they were already so full they couldn't stand up straight. To ensure the doctor would draw a bit more blood, the older brother offered a watermelon to curry favor. Originally, they could only draw 1 bottle of blood, but now one person could draw 3 bottles. After each blood draw, they had to come to the roadside stall for a bowl of blood soup to replenish. At that time, they must not neglect themselves. That evening, Xu Sanguan found his beloved Yulan and took out the prepared betrothal. He asked Yulan's father to marry his daughter to him, saying he could be a live-in son-in-law, and that both families share the surname Xu. This could also continue the relationship between the two families. After hearing this, Yulan's father felt it made some sense. Not only did he agree to marry Yulan to him, but he also returned the betrothal gifts. However, Yulan came out to refuse because she already had a boyfriend. It was the village's wealthy second generation He Xiaoyang. The next day, Yulan found He Xiaoyang and asked him if he could come to her house. Unexpectedly, He Xiaoyang decisively refused after hearing this. Just like that, such a beautiful village flower married the village poor boy. In the blink of an eye, 11 years passed, and Xu Sanguan and Yulan had a happy marriage, raising 3 sons together. Among the 3 sons, Xu Sanguan favored his eldest son, Yu. But as Yu grew older, rumors quickly spread in the village, saying he looked like He Xiaoyang, especially those eyebrows, which looked exactly like his. There was even a time when the land officer mistakenly took Yu for He Xiaoyang's son and directly delivered He Xiaoyang's letter to him. When Sanguan saw the name on the letter, he was very angry and decided to silence the whole village. The next day, Sanguan took Yi out early in the morning for a paternity test and gathered all the villagers in the square, telling them not to spread rumors anymore. But when he saw the test report, Xu Sanguan was dumbfounded. The son he had raised for 11 years actually had no relation to him at all. Xu Sanguan couldn't believe it and turned away, while the villagers snatched the report and read it aloud. He became the laughingstock of the entire village. Xu Sanguan angrily ran home, overturned the chili peppers on the table, and questioned Yulan about what was going on. Yulan was confused when asked and angrily turned back into the house. Xu Sanguan drove away the villagers who were watching the commotion. He continued to question Yulan about whether she had slept with Xiaoyang. After knowing the truth, Xu Sanguan was utterly devastated, cursing Xu Xiaoyang and that scoundrel. From then on, he fell into a deep slump, lying in bed all day doing nothing. His younger brother told him to call himself dad in front of outsiders and to call himself uncle when alone. One day, Sanguan's little son was bullied, so he sought revenge from his second brother. Unexpectedly, the other side brought the village kids Wang. Kid Wang kicked the second brother to the ground with one kick. The two then called for the eldest brother, and after confirming their target, they picked up stones and directly smashed them down. This scared all the kids present. The next day, the other party's parents came looking for Sanguan. They demanded 5,000 yuan for medical expenses, but Sanguan said they should go find their biological father for the money. I've already raised someone else's child for 11 years. That's enough injustice. Now you want me to cover the medical expenses? That's a bit unreasonable, isn't it? After hearing this, the other party felt there was some truth to it, so they came to ask for money at Xiaoyang's house. Who would have thought Xiang would take out their family tree and asked if there were any surnames listed that belonged to them. Since there weren't, why should they ask him for money in the end? The other party hired an ox cart. They came to Xu Sanguan's house to move out their things. Xu Sanguan said, "Take anything but my things. You can take whatever else you want." When Yule saw the mother's things being taken away, he rushed up desperately to stop them. "Dad, stop hitting Mom. Please let her go. You bastard! Where's your father in this house?" Yulan couldn't bear to see this family collapse. So the next day she put on a disguise, wore brand new shoes, and came to Xiaoyang's house. She said, "My husband has raised your son for 11 years. So let's forget about the money for food and drink. But this time the medical expenses must be paid by you." However, Xiaoyang not only denied that Yule was his son, but also physically attacked Yulan, telling her to go back where she came from. Yulan returned home in distress. Sanguan knew what had happened. Although he spoke coolly, his heart still ached for Yulan. So the next day, Xu Sanguan came to the hospital to sell shoes, redeemed all the furniture, and even took money to buy Yulan a new pair of shoes. To celebrate the family's reunion, Sanguan decided to take them out for meat buns, but seeing a happy expression on Yila's face reminded him that he was the son of Xiaoyang. Xu Sanguan became a bit angry, so he quietly called Yili to the side and sent him to his grandfather's house to eat roasted sweet potatoes. He pointed to the scars from selling blood and said that selling blood was to ensure his own family could eat enough. While Yile was the son of Xiaoyang, he wouldn't use the money from selling blood to continue supporting someone else's son. Yile asked him if he would take him to eat buns if he were his son. Although Yile knew that his dad hated him, he couldn't help but feel happy when he heard this. Even if he was eating dry sweet potato skins at his grandfather's house, Yile was still willing. That day, while driving with Xiaoyang, he had a nosebleed and then fainted, resulting in a car accident. When he was sent to the hospital, he was diagnosed with encephalitis. Although he was still alive, he couldn't wake up, and the doctors were helpless. After Xu Sanguan learned this, he couldn't be happier, feeling it was a form of karmic retribution. Good deeds bring good rewards, and evil deeds bring evil rewards. Meanwhile, Xiaoyang's wife, in a panic, sought help from a healer. The healer said that there was only one sentence left for Xiao now. As long as they performed a soul-calling ritual, he could come back to life. But the ritual required the son to call his father's spirit back. After hearing this, Xiaoyang's wife came to Xu Sanguan's house, hoping Yile could help bring Xiaoyang back, promising to support Yile through college. Upon hearing this, Xu Sanguan stood up in anger. No matter how poor he was, he would never sell his child. But in the end, considering Yile's future, Xu Sanguan still let go. Instead, he cut off some of Xiaoyang's hair, placed it in a container, then burned it with fire, reciting a spell as the soul-calling ritual officially began, allowing Yile to call for his father to come back. Although Xiang was Yile's biological father, he had not fulfilled the responsibilities of a father even for a day. Yile couldn't express this, so he could only write words on paper for Yile to read aloud. However, Xiaoyong's wife complained that she read without emotion. At this moment, Xu Sanguan was worried and came to the window to check, and Yile saw him too. Upon hearing this, Xu Sanguan quickly hid, but Yile still cried out for his father to take him away, as if expressing his own grievances. Although Xu Sanguan had no blood relation with him, he was the only father in Yile's heart. Sanguan listened from outside the window, his heart aching, as Yile walked to the window seeking help from his father. Xu Sanguan could no longer suppress himself and directly burst into the room. On the way back, Xu Sanguan carried Yile on his back, who was laughing so happily that he was unwilling to let go. Xu Sanguan finally realized that although he and Yile had no blood relationship, the bond they had developed over the years was more important than blood ties. He believed that their family would live happily like this, but heaven had not planned to let them off easily. That day, Yile suddenly fainted while playing with her younger brother. Xu Sanguan hurriedly took Yile to the hospital. The doctor diagnosed her with hereditary encephalitis from Xiaoyang and urged him to rush to a larger hospital. Sanguan put Yile on a bus to the provincial city and asked Yulan to take her to see a doctor first. He returned to the village to borrow money, but she ran from house to house in the village, yet it was still like a drop in the bucket. Xu Sanguan was at his wit's end and planned to sell blood again, but the doctor said that after selling blood, one had to rest for at least 3 months. Upon hearing this, Xu Sanguan knelt before the doctor, saying that if he died from blood loss, he wouldn't hold him responsible. However, the doctor still refused to draw blood from him, but suggested that he sell blood at another hospital after he was done. Other hospitals wouldn't know when he last sold blood. Xu Sanguan ran from one hospital to another, with the reward for selling blood being 3,000 yuan. But Yudan told him that the medical expenses would be at least 30,000. After hearing this, Sanguan told Yulan not to worry, lying that he had already borrowed the money. But once he hung up, he hurried off to another hospital. Even though his arms had already been pricked black and blue, he showed no signs of stopping. In one day, he had run to 5 hospitals, and his arms were covered in needle marks. He arrived at the 6th hospital, but the nurses there were rushing people out, pushing pale-faced individuals out of the line. After seeing this, Sangwan went outside, continuously slapping his face, then hung upside down over the railing to let the blood rush to his head. It looked a bit healthier that way. Sure enough, he successfully sold blood again, but looking at the money in his hand, he was still far from 30,000. After a short rest, Xu Sanguan returned to the hospital to sell blood again. But this time he couldn't hold on any longer and fainted on the ground. The doctor, in order to save him, not only returned the blood that had been drawn but also transfused an additional 100 milliliters. Now he not only didn't earn any money, but the hospital also made him pay for the writing fees. Sanguan extended his arm, asking them to draw back the 100 milliliters that had been transfused, continuously pleading for it. After leaving the hospital, Sanguan had lost all semblance of humanity, looking like a mere shell, but he still had to hurry to the provincial city's large hospital. Upon arriving at the hospital, he pushed open one ward after another, searching for his wife's and child's figures. In the quiet hospital corridor, Xu Sanguan shouted Yila's name loudly, but was forcibly dragged out of the hospital by security, who mistook him for a troublemaker. It seemed like Yila heard her father calling. However, when he reached the street, he did not see the voice he had been longing for day and night. Yila looked out the window dejectedly, and just happened to see Sanguan being pushed out, helplessly standing on the street, not knowing where to go. Yila decisively pulled out a tree leaf needle and walked out of the hospital to look for her father's figure, but Sanguan had already disappeared into the crowd. Suddenly, she saw it was Sanguan, exhausted, sitting against the wall to rest. Sanguan also heard Yila's cries and climbed over the railing to reach him. The father and son hugged tightly, and Yila took him back to the ward. What they saw was the preview after the surgery had just been completed. It turned out that Yila's condition had become increasingly severe. Yulan had no choice but to sell herself under such circumstances. Xu Sanguan kept apologizing, saying he had come too late. At the end of the movie, Xu Sanguan brought his whole family to the bun shop, where they enjoyed the hot, steamy meat buns they had longed for. In life, it's not just about having students. As long as the family is healthy and together, that is the happiest moment.